Yes. Hello, my beautiful friends. What an amazing day it is. Very glad that you're here and with us because we've got some serious business to attend to today. A bunch of stuff queued up. We're going to zoom in on this shooting that happened in Minneapolis. We got updates from Kash Patel and others. And then we've got Supreme Court business. We've got birthright citizenship stuff coming out of the Ninth Circuit. And we also got the backdoor judge on the docket. This is, of course, Judge Dugan, because she filed a motion to dismiss, and we now know what the court has said about it. So, quick preview, and then we'll zoom in for further detail. But here is what we're going to get into. You can see Kash Patel was out and got a bunch of reaction on what happened. Apparently, this dude went out and tried to, and did actually kill some young kids, shot a bunch of other people. Horrific scene. And we're learning more about who the shooter was. And the fact is, this guy was a trans person. And his family was endorsing it, and he changed his name and all the things. And so since he was trans, we see that this caused people like Mayor Frey to come out and say, don't you be mean to the T's, all right? The T's are amazing, and don't worry about the dead kids because don't be mean to the T's. So we'll talk about it. We also had weirdos like Jen Psaki saying, will you stop your prayer? And we know why they would make those suggestions. But we got the flag was ordered to be lowered, and we're going to save this young man for the end because, man, this is just a miracle of a clip. And we'll listen to that all coming up. So hard day, tough day, prayers up for the families, and may those young kids rest in peace. We'll come back to that. But we've also got some Supreme Court news because the DOJ, the Trump DOJ, submitted this one yesterday, and it's a banger. It's a good one. And this is about the billions of dollars that the lower level judges have ordered that the Trump administration pay out to people who don't deserve it. Well, they're saying to SCOTUS, you got to step in and stop this, okay? They're telling us now we got to give another $2 billion out. So please do something about this, John Roberts, please. So we'll go through that. Then we've got an update on this birthright citizenship stuff. This is the Rubio Moncada case. This is about the diplomat's son. And it's an interesting case because we can zoom in on what subject to the jurisdiction thereof happens to mean and articulate how this applies to the other birthright citizenship issues that are percolating around the country right now. Then we got backdoor Dugan, the backdoor judge who let an illegal alien use her backdoor, or private backdoor, and just let him right out. And he was re-picked up by ICE, and she submitted a motion to dismiss, and the court has come down and given us an order. And so, as you can see, my friends, we've got a lot to get to today. Very glad to have you here. Thanks for subscribing to our channel if you haven't already. And thanks for considering becoming a member. We had a great members-only stream this morning. We talked about the Shiloh Hendricks criminal charges this morning, and so we'll have a segment on that coming out. But we'd love it if you joined us during our morning streams. We go live basically every day of the week, even on Saturdays for our membos, and not Sundays. But we'll see you there if you'd like to join. Join it watchingthewatchers.locals.com or click the join button on YouTube. And we'll see you over there. Thanks for supporting our work as well. We appreciate you. All right. So without any further ado, let's talk about this. Tragedy in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Demonic figures doing demonic things. You see an update from Kash Patel on the latest on this story, saying the FBI is investigating this shooting as an act of domestic terrorism and hate crime targeting Catholics, which is interesting. I'm a Catholic and I oppose hate crimes because it's already a crime to murder someone. And then everything turns into a hate crime. You just call somebody a bad name. You're like, oh, you hate them, don't you? Or this is bigotry or xenophobia or anti-Semitism or whatever it is. It's just constant hate crime, hate crime, hate crime. It's already illegal to murder people, so that's pretty good. Now, there were 2 fatalities, an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old. In addition, 14 children and 3 adults were injured. The shooter has been identified as Robin Westman, a male born as Robert Westman. Selling a good name. The FBI will continue to provide updates on our ongoing investigation with the public as we are able. So the White House has ordered the flags to be flown at half staff at the White House and all public buildings, saying as a mark of respect for the victims of the senseless act of violence perpetrated on August 27th in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Now, what we'll see on this is that sources are confirming that this dude was a trans. He was a T. Says sources confirmed to the Fox. This is over from Brooke Taylor. She reports for Fox that the shooter has been identified as a 23-year-old called Robin Westman. According to court docs, at the age of 17, Robert Westman formally had his legal name changed to Robin because documents state that the minor child identifies as female and wants her name to reflect the identification. All right. The application for a name change of a minor was filed by mom, and a court granted the request back in 2020. Okay. So the parents are facilitating this. As a minor, okay, this person's 17, let them change, let them transition. You see the documents are here, and it looks like Mary Grace is mom. And it's an order granting the name change of a minor. Says the application is made in good faith without the intent to defraud or mislead. Mislead? What? You're not a female. You're misleading everybody, including yourself. Each minor child who is seeking a name change has lived in the state of Minnesota. They gave the old address. The applicant is the parent, and name of each minor child, Robert Paul Westman, born 6/17/2002. Non-applicant parents, James. I wonder what James has to say about this. So maybe their parents are divorced, don't know. But then the applicant requests to have the name of each minor child changed to Robin. Now, this minor child has not been convicted of anything. And the minor child, what's the reason? The minor child identifies as a female and wants her name to reflect that ID. And the name shall be Robin M. Westman. It's wild. Like the judge didn't even really write it clearly. Signed by the judge. Judicially enabled transition that resulted in an unwell person committing heinous acts. And so that happened. And what we're also seeing is the parents were on board with this. Andy NGO, your favorite reporter, he says Minneapolis trans mass shooter of the Christian children called Robin Westman came from a very liberal family in Minnesota. Yeah. Who fully affirmed his transition. His 18th birthday was celebrated also by his father, James, in the trans colors, and the family had the court change his legal identity when he was still a minor. The reason? Because he identifies as a female. And here's daddy, Jim. Great job, Jim. Happy 18th birthday, Robin. We love you. Great job. Yeah, so well done. And this is what the dude looks like, transitioning into something that he isn't. And the parents, we saw in other cases, parents get charged for this stuff. Remember what happened in Ethan Crumbley's case when he went out and shot up a school? Well, the parents got charged. They got convicted of that because they were complicit and negligent in this entire operation. So maybe the parents should be charged here as well. And we should spread the liability around to the families who are enabling the kids, whether they're T's or not, whether they're, white guys like Trey Gowdy says. It doesn't matter. We want to have proper laws across the standards across all people. We don't want murder happening in our societies. Now, we had Trey Gowdy. Did I have him queued up here? Oh, I think I did. Yes, here it is. And so Trey Gowdy, okay, whether it's the T's or the whites or whatever, here is what Trey Gowdy, this is where his head went in the immediate aftermath of this. Trey Gowdy.
Our system is reactive. Something bad happens, we react to it. And what people are crying for now is how can we prevent this? How can we stop it? And the only way to stop it is to identify the shooter ahead of time or keep the weapons out of their hands. And so we're going to have a conversation of freedom versus protecting children. I mean, how many school shootings?
The kid transitioned as he was 17 years old. So how about they didn't protect you guys? The government didn't protect him against his maniac, in my opinion, parents and the maniac courts and the maniac doctors who all facilitate this madness.
Does it take before we're going to have a conversation about keeping firearms out? It's always a young white male, almost always. I mean, did anyone this morning think, I wonder if that was a female? Did any?
He did. He thought he was a female, Trey. Maybe you should focus on that before you run your mouth about white guys.
If y'all think that, I mean, there's been one school shooting involving a female.
It was in Tennessee.
One. Yeah, Tennessee. But other than that, it is usually young white males.
Yeah, well, this guy thought that he was a female. And Trey, of course, doesn't want to really talk about that. So we'll immediately just jump to, I guess, red flag laws will be the next thing coming out of his mouth. And blaming white shooters for this, even though this guy was a female, according to his own identity. But nobody wants to talk about the transition. So Jacob Frey come out, the mayor of Minneapolis, and he's screaming about the trans. We have Catholic kids who just got killed. And he's like, be nice to the T's, Rob.
And I have heard about a whole lot of hate that's being directed at our trans community. Anybody who is using this as an opportunity to villainize our trans community or any other community out there has lost their sense of common humanity.
Oh, is that right? How about you've lost your humanity for allowing children to be abused and exploited for your own sick political endeavors?
For anyone. We should be operating from a place of love for our kids. Kids died today. This needs to be about them. This needs to be wrapping our arms around these families with every bit of love that we can possibly show.
All right, so you get the point. So he's just doing a little campaign speech, supporting the T's because that's his constituency. But he also said, we don't want to hear your prayers, okay? You Christians and your prayers, get out of here.
Those families are suffering immense pain right now. Think of this as if it were your own. Every one of us needs to be wrapping our arms around these families, giving them every ounce that we can muster. These were Minneapolis families. These were American families. And the amount of pain that they are suffering right now is extraordinary. And don't just say this is about thoughts and prayers right now. These kids were literally praying. It was the first week of school. They were in a church.
Okay, that is basically, where is your God now, is what he's saying, which is a very provocative concept. Where is your God now as you're about to be martyred?
These are kids that should be learning with their friends. They should be playing on the playground.
Yeah, okay, we got it. But instead, your psychopath party is transitioning lunatics into something they're not, enabling them, and this is happening repeatedly. We've had multiple T shootings, and nobody else they don't want to talk about that anymore. They still like to blame white people, white men, essentially, even though it's a lot of T's lately that are being popped up on God knows what types of hormones from these maniacs, and then committing horrific crimes against kids and students and everybody. And so Jen Psaki said the same thing. Okay, Jen Psaki, I think she changed the name of her show. I'm not sure. It might still be Inside Jen Psaki. But she says, prayer is not freaking enough, Christians. Prayers do not end school shootings. Prayers do not make parents feel safe sending their kids to school. Prayer does not bring these kids back. Enough with your thoughts and your prayers, which is hilarious because every single, like, how many times did Joe Biden say thoughts and prayers? How many times did Jen Psaki run her mouth offering her thoughts and prayers? All the time. She was the press secretary. That's all they say. It is a trite old phrase. They just, our thoughts and prayers are with you during this difficult time. Like, all right, it's just like copy and paste. We can tell. They say it all the time. It's like a template for everything. And so they drop it repeatedly. But Jen Psaki, of course, that's not exactly what she means. Sean Davis had a great comment on this. He says, just step back for one quick second and just ask yourself a very simple question. If you were a demon on this planet, how would you respond to the shooting of Catholic kids? He says, ask yourself how an actual demon would respond to Christian children being martyred by a demon-possessed monster, probably with explicit mockery of God and prayer is how they would respond, right? Probably with mockery of God. Then ask yourself why Psaki's response is exactly how an actual demon would respond. Yeah, well, we know the answer to that, Sean. Thank you. So we also see that there's a lot of actual, photographs and stuff of this guy's manifesto. And I don't want to spread it around here because honestly, I do think it is demonic and it is pretty disgusting and disturbing. But it is, I think, an indicator of a deeper problem. And the whole manifesto's out there. He actually has a whole 10-minute video. If you want to go dig into that, of course, you can do that. But this is an attack, and they don't appreciate the power of the prayer or the concept of praying in the face of difficulty. And so here is a beautiful, beautiful video. I mean, a horrific scene, but the story this 10-year-old shares hits hard. And so let's watch this one together.
My friend ran, someone helped him run out. He saw him, he was wearing all black and he had a ski mask on. I was down, so I didn't really look up. I mean, he got shot through the stained glass windows, so they're probably ruined. And then my friend Victor, he was laying on top of me, making sure I was safe, and he got hit.
Shout out to Victor, man.
So that was really brave of him.
And you have a nick on your neck?
Yeah, that was, I don't even know what it's from. Kind of looks like debris or something. My friend.
Unbelievable. So shout out to Victor, man, for protecting that young man with his body getting shot. Hopefully Victor survives. But evil afoot out there. And the first thing the Democrats do in response to this is to say, stop being mean to the T's. Don't talk about the shooter. Trey Gowdy over there on Fox News. It's probably like Trey Gowdy. And now Psaki and the rest of them are saying, take your prayers and cram them, is basically what they're saying. Well, we're not going to do that. And so prayers out for all of the people at the school, all the families impacted by this, to all those who have been killed senselessly by a demonic figure, enabled by demonic figures. May they rest in peace and enjoy eternal heaven and greatness up above. All right, so my friends, we'll keep our eye on that story. Horrific. And so now let's turn our attention to something else. Because we've got Supreme Court business to attend to. And so, changing gears a little bit and adjusting the mood and the tone of the room, let's get to it. Major appeal in the Supreme Court of the United States. This one's fresh out of the oven, and you can see it's being delivered by D. John Sauer over to the Supreme Court of the United States. This is in the case against the AIDS doctors, okay, who we've made a lot of fun of here because we don't really know what they do. An AIDS vaccine advocacy coalition, aka the AIDS doctors, who just gobble up USAID money and then go chop off genitals in the sub-Sahara. So what's happening now is the DOJ is suing, and they're not happy about what's going on. They're going up to the Supreme Court, filing a petition for a writ of cert. So they're not actually suing, they're being sued by these people. But in response to what's been happening at the lower levels, they are knocking on the door, asking John Roberts to do something. John, here's where they start. This case began as an emergency over whether the district court had jurisdiction to order the government, the lower level judge, whether he could order the government to pay $2 billion, that's a lot of money, for contractual work completed under foreign aid grants, right? Pay them their money. $2 billion, that's a lot. I know we throw around like trillions and hundreds of billions. It's a lot. That goes right into the Democratic infrastructure. So Trump rescinded it. Now the lower courts are battling over it. Now the district court, which is a great line, now that the district court at the lower level has installed itself as supervisor in chief for further spending and rescission proposals, they issued a preliminary injunction. They ordered us to make available for obligation tens of billions of dollars, not just the two, and spend many billions of dollars before September 30th, before these appropriations expire, right? The courts are saying, shell out that cash. Instead of seeking emergency relief in March, the government proposed a schedule. They said, well, how about we just appeal this stuff and we can duke it out up there? On August 13th, the DC Circuit panel, so the Court of Appeals, they agreed that the preliminary injunction should be vacated in its entirety, okay? So boom, Trump wins. The injunction is an order. You are ordered to pay the money. Court says, ridiculous, all right? DC Circuit panel, no, it's vacated. But then the full court, the en banc court, the rest of the judges, without even granting review, they have refused to either stay the injunction or to issue the mandate. Okay, so in other words, the panel said Trump wins, but the court hasn't issued the final order saying Trump wins. So now the government is subject to an injunction that the panel said is wrong. It's erroneous. So the government then is now, we got to come to you. We got to ask you, Supreme Court, to give effect to the DC Circuit's decision, because they're not telling the lower judge, which correctly held that private parties cannot enlist Article 3 courts to supplant interbranch dialogue about the spending of money, okay? Which is a very highly engineered sentence. Well done. So, in other words, these AIDS doctors don't have the right to sue and sue in the Article 3 courts, in these district courts, claiming due process violations, violations of the APA. Our rights are being taken from us. Your right to billions of dollars of taxpayer money, you think you have a right to that or something like that? They do. They say you can't do that. There's already mechanisms for this. You got your grants terminated. It happens all the time. You can file over here. You got lost your job as a federal employee. Okay, go file over there. It says since the founding, Congress and the presidents, this is Trump writing, and the DOJ, have occasionally clashed over the use of appropriated funds. And this is a big issue, some good history here, because we always have this conflict between the two branches. The legislative branch, Congress, they have the power of the purse, so they appropriate the money. The president executes the law. So then he takes that money and he does something with it. Now, the thesis from the original interpretation is that you've got these two balancing interests. Like there's a natural tension between there. Congress says, we think that this is necessary and proper, which is their obligation under the Constitution. But the executive has the take care clause. Okay, so they can be against each other. If the Congress passes money that is illegitimate, we order you to go do this illegitimate thing, and it's unconstitutional, the president's not obligated to do that. It's a separate division of power, and there should be a tension. And if the president doesn't spend the money, well, that's okay. And Congress is very upset about it. They still have powers. They can go impeach him and remove him. It's not complicated. There's a check on that power. So if the president impounds the funds because Congress is spending them in a way that disables the president from following his constitutional duty, which is to take care, then it's unconstitutional, right? We want the impoundment process to be enabled so that there can be this tension and they can work it out through the political process. So some history on this. Congress, with the power of the purse, appropriates money for specific programs. Now, the president has the exclusive authority to enforce the laws, has often disagreed about how those funds should be spent. A lot of history. Rewind the clock back to President Thomas Jefferson. Number 3 in the House. He famously withheld $50,000, a lot back then, for gunboats on the Mississippi during negotiations over the Louisiana Purchase. And Lyndon Johnson, remember him? He impounded funds for small watershed projects for the construction of a national aquarium. I'm like, well, okay, it's an aquarium, so what? Like, nobody cares about that. But this has been a historical battle, okay? The executive doesn't want to spend the money that Congress appropriates. They have long resolved these disagreements, though, through the political process. For instance, when President Ulysses Grant informed Congress that he would not spend funds appropriated for harbor and river improvements based on his view of the national interest, members of Congress objected. They said, what? We just passed it. You got to honor this. But Congress ultimately dropped the issue. Wasn't that big? And no efforts were made to restrict presidential discretion over the appropriated money back then. Now, for most of the nation's history, this give and take involved informal interbranch negotiations as it was structured. But then our country, as part of his perversion, a lot of it happened in the 70s, Congress went mad. We have these waves of insanity, like the 1913s, the 1970s. And Congress came out. Nixon was impounding a bunch of money. He's like, nope, I'm not spending that. Are you kidding me? No. And Congress then responded. They passed this Impoundment Control Act, which codified mechanisms for the political branches to work through these disputes. If there's a problem, this is how you handle it. Now, under the act, the executive branch, so Trump here, would initiate the negotiations. If they say, okay, Congress, we know that you said that we have to spend this money, but we're not going to do it, got to notify Congress. Then Congress can rescind the money if they want, citing the code. Now, the ICA, the Impoundment Act, does not set any deadline within a fiscal year by which the executive branch must propose rescissions, nor does it specify what happens if the funds expire while Congress is considering a proposal. Okay, so there's not a lot of details on here. So Trump can wait till the end of the fiscal year and just say, we're going to spend a bunch of money on these things now. Presidents have proposed rescissions shortly before the end of the fiscal year, and funds have not been spent when Congress failed to act on proposed funding lapses, rescissions before the funding lapsed. Now, the ICA involves the judiciary in those interbranch disputes only as a last resort. Okay, don't get the courts involved. It authorizes suits to challenge the noncompliance, but the act contemplates which suits, such suits only if the comptroller concludes that the executive branch failed. All right. So in other words, these people shouldn't even be here. This is a lawsuit that should be brought by the comptroller general. They don't have jurisdiction to just sue over this because the law says that guy makes the claim. If the comptroller concludes that the president failed to make the funds available, then they can come up with that conclusion and authorize a suit. But even then, Congress only authorized this person. They can sue to sue the executive branch only after notifying Congress of the proposed suit and its rationale and 25 calendar days of a continuous session in Congress to elapse. And so they can't just sue out of nowhere. There's all these hurdles. Because it's a ridiculous public policy, by the way. You get to sue the government because they're not giving you money that you think, and we want our courts to enable that. No, we've got a whole other set of systems that are built for that. This isn't like Congress is the appropriate counterparty to the executive branch. It's not the AIDS doctors when it comes to government policy. Regardless of whether such suits should be justiciable, whether we should allow them to proceed in court, they make plain that Congress intended to strictly limit federal courts' involvement in these disputes. But in March 2025, Trump comes in, he's sworn in, a single district court supplanted that entire process. The court said, notwithstanding what the law says, they said basically anyone who might get appropriated funds but fears that they can be impounded can sue. They can sue preemptively to challenge the impoundments. Under what basis? Now, as relief, the court further held that those private parties can obtain objections, and they got one. The district court thus displaced the process that the law says the political branches have to engage in to resolve these disputes. Private parties could leapfrog the entire law with new causes of action, and district courts could then be the appropriators of the money, right? They're the ones who then say, well, okay, you have to pay that. So they're basically the stewards, like the trustee of the money. That's not their purview. Now, thus here, the respondents, the organizations that intended to compete for that money, they objected, right? So all these AIDS doctors and everybody, that's our money, we need it. The district court in March granted an injunction, said you have to pay them $12 billion. The government got an appeal. We're working our way up now. Now we're at the Supreme Court. Now, the DC Circuit vacated it, so you can't force them to pay anything. But then, now, with the deadline, the en banc DC Circuit has effectively maintained the preliminary injunction, notwithstanding the panel opinion issued after full briefing and argument, and exacerbated all the consequences. Now, absent this court's intervention, the DC Circuit is not acting, and it's going to preclude the government from proposing rescissions and allow the funds to expire by September 30th because we're stalled out. In other words, it will effectively force the government to rapidly obligate some $12 billion of money, overriding Trump's foreign policy judgment, and that's our elected leader, right? So much for democracy from these judges. That alone is irreparable harm, says Trump's DOJ. And unless this court, John Roberts, grants relief by September 2nd, which is coming up soon, the executive branch must also take, and this is why the court is stalling it out. They're like, well, they got a deadline coming up, and if they can't get it done, then they'll just have to follow our order. Must take extensive steps that themselves inflict irreparable harm. Now they're trying to negotiate with foreign countries about assistance. And even if we win, backtracking on those commitments, now we have to go say, okay, our court ordered us to give a foreign government a bunch of American money. But we won, and so now we have to go back to you, Uganda, and take a bunch of money back. We're still, by recognizing a novel cause of action for private parties to preemptively challenge these impoundments. So in other words, the private AIDS doctors can just sue the government because they're not getting money. The district court issued a blueprint for virtually any recipient of federal funds to circumvent the actual law and just sue directly, regardless of when those funds expire. This is not, Congress never intended for the courts to superintend the disbursement of the money. And so that result would be alarming. And even under the injunction, they have no guarantee of getting a penny, making it more incongruous for them to effectively commandeer the spending of millions of dollars. And so we want to stay, and the government respectfully requests relief as soon as possible, but Supreme Court no later than September 2nd, 2025. And so the rest of this is going to be zooming in on that summary for us. But let's see, as we fast forward to the conclusion, saying you should grant us a stay because there's going to be serious irreparable harm here. They say you should stop the lower level judge. And the Solicitor General respectfully requests also an administrative stay of the order as well. Respectfully submitted by the Trump DOJ, D. John Sauer. And so we'll see what the Supreme Court does. We know that they're on shadow docket status, but we've got like 5 days or however many days are left in order for them to come in here and stop that money from going out the door because lower level judges think that other countries should have, and AIDS doctors and the Global Health Council. And we looked them up. We went to their websites. Nobody knows what they do, okay? Is there an AIDS vaccine? You just take it and you're vaccinated against AIDS? I didn't think so. So what are they doing? They're advocating for it, and they have a coalition. So it's like they write blog posts or something like that, and they need billions of dollars to do it. Well, we got a new president. We got a new Congress, and we have a difference of opinion about what is taking care of America from the purview of the executive branch. And Trump won. The people voted accordingly. And now the Supreme Court should do something about it. So hopefully John Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett get this and act with haste. All right, so we have more to get to. Now let's go over to another court and talk some birthright citizenship business because this is some good stuff here as well. Birthright citizenship denied for this person called Roberto Moncado. And there's some interesting parallels between this person's case, which is a bit unique because he was the son of a diplomat, and other illegal aliens who are in our country. The question, of course, for both of them is what does subject to the jurisdiction thereof mean? It's in the 14th Amendment. And they say, many people, that if you're just physically here, you're kind of inside the geographic jurisdiction, and so that's enough. Whereas the actual interpretation is you have to engage with the laws and agree to be under those laws and to be held accountable to those laws. And if you don't do that because you're the diplomat's son and you have immunity and you're not subject to our laws, then you're not subject to our jurisdiction. Or, in my opinion, if you're an illegal alien and you come into this country illegally and you are not subject to the jurisdiction because you're not checking in at a port of entry, you're not validating yourself with ICE or immigration, you're here operating in the shadows in open violation, flagrant violation of the law, knowing you're here illegally, you are not subject to the jurisdiction, and neither is your child. So your child comes out, you have been in the country illegally, unlawfully, in open repudiation of the jurisdiction. Birthright citizenship shouldn't apply to you either. So we'll see how this may parallel over, but here's the case. Roberto Moncado versus Marco Rubio saying, I am a citizen, you know. Court says, no, you're not. The Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals ruling down on this one, and we've got a nice decision. It says, the panel here affirmed the lower level judgment of the lower level district court and denied Robert Moncado's claim to have birthright citizenship. So does not count. He is not subject to the jurisdiction thereof. Here's the story. Moncada was born in New York City, July 1950, when his father, who was a Nicaraguan national, was working for Nicaragua's permanent mission to the United Nations. For nearly 70 years, Moncada lived and worked in the United States as an American citizen. 5 times he subscribed the oath of allegiance, and 5 times the government issued a passport. In 2018, however, the government revoked his passport, said, wait a minute, you didn't acquire birthright citizenship because his father, your dad, when he was here, he had diplomatic immunity when Moncada was born. And I'm wondering, like, who caught that, man? And how did this even come up after all those years? It's like wild. So somebody was reviewing those records. And of course, that was during the Trump years. So we don't know what was going on there. But this guy got flagged. Actually, you're not a citizen. Your dad was a diplomat. So no. The 14th Amendment provides, we've read it many times, all persons born in the United States, comma, and subject to the jurisdiction thereof, comma, are citizens of the United States. Now, a lot of other judges just forget those commas because they think they don't matter because it serves them to delete them. But it is a separate phrase. And Moncada's claim depends. Is he actually subject to the jurisdiction of the United States when he was born, or did he have immunity through his dad? Looking to federal and international law, the panel explained that the question turned on whether President Truman received Moncada's father as an attaché, okay, going all the way back. So was he classified as this or that? Or whether he served as a consul, okay, because there's a difference. So how did Truman receive this person in? If Moncada's father was an attaché, then the father and his family, everybody, held full diplomatic immunity, meaning they were not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States, because you can't prosecute them. They can, do something bad and you can't, they're immune. So they're not subject to the jurisdiction. They haven't agreed or acquiesced to the jurisdiction. Okay, they still have their old jurisdiction, which the United States is honoring. And if that is true, not subject to the jurisdiction, then he doesn't have citizenship status, not a birthright citizen. Now, if the father was a consul, a different status, then he held immunity, but much more limited, only for official acts, meaning that he and his family were subject to the jurisdiction of the United States, okay, because he could get prosecuted. And Moncada was a birthright citizenship. Again, by their agreement, right? They're coming in. Yes, if he was a consul, I'm a consul. Something happens here. I could be. It's a different agreement. The country, the sovereign, the United States entered into these terms with this person, and they came here all by agreement. Now, in the district court, the Secretary of State produced a recently executed certification of Moncada's diplomatic immunity at birth. Right? Got some sort of certification, says, you got immunity, little baby. Arguing it was conclusive and binding, meaning this is evidence he does not have citizen. Okay, if he's got immunity, he cannot have citizenship. The district court declined to recognize that certificate as conclusive, but it still held that the secretary established by clear and convincing evidence that he was not a citizen. So then the panel explained how this all works. Generally speaking, when the president receives a diplomat, how they do that is conclusive under the Constitution. But whether the president has, in fact, received a diplomat such that the diplomat's children are not entitled to birthright citizenship goes over to the 14th Amendment, and Congress says the courts answer this question. So why are the courts even getting involved? Because Congress wants them to. Now, the panel agreed with the district court that the certificate was not conclusive evidence of his non-citizenship, saying that while a certificate may be important evidence, we have to consider the factual determination in whether the president received the person as a diplomat. It is not conclusive to conclusive to the exclusion of other conflicting evidence. And so we look at a bunch of things. Now, the panel reviewed the evidence, including the conflicting evidence, and concluded the district court did not clearly err, not a clear mistake, saying that dad held diplomatic immunity. And so they're very unhappy about this decision. They note the district court said this is impossible to conclude that this is justice, right? Shout out to them. Very unhappy. They say, I cannot believe we're divesting this dude who's been here like 70 years and has all of these oaths of affirmation. We're stripping him of citizenship. They're like, yeah, we have to. It's the law. The panel, which is right, it's exactly right. It is the law. Impossible to conclude that this is justice. The panel stated it shared the concern, but explained that as inequitable as this result is, courts lack the power, the equitable power to remedy the government's errors. And that's nice. It's called judicial restraint. Yes, thank you. Nice to see it for once. You're not supposed to substitute your opinions. If the law is clear, the law is clear. Okay, might want to fund all of the AIDS doctors in Africa and all the trans programs in Central America, but the laws that enable the president to take care of the execution of the laws support him. Now, here's the full opinion. More background. Robert Moncada, born July 1950, dad, Nicaraguan national, worked for the permanent mission to the United Nations. And I'm wondering if, the Trump administration came in and they're wondering, who do we know from Nicaragua? And maybe they're having a Nicaraguan problem and maybe this guy's still doing work, but let's see. 70 years, lived and worked in the United States as an American citizen. 5 times subscribed to the oath of allegiance. 5 times the government issued him a passport. In the district court's words, a child was born in America, told by the government, his own government, that he was an American citizen, and it told him this again and again and again. The government repeatedly affirmed that Moncada's father and his status did not confer diplomatic immunity on his kids. They were wrong. So the government said that he was born subject to the jurisdiction thereof, and he was a citizen. But the government was wrong all along. In 2018, the government reviewed the records and found that Moncada's father served as an attaché. He was not a consul when Moncada was born, and that means full diplomatic immunity. So the government now says, actually, he was not born subject to the jurisdiction thereof, and he is not a citizen. And the government revoked his passport and told him he did not acquire U.S. citizenship by virtue of his birth here. And I'm wondering what triggered that. Like, did this dude start speaking out? Is he talking garbage against Trump, or is he working with somebody? So they're like, look into his background. What's he doing here? Moncada sued for a declaratory judgment that he's a citizen. The secretary responded by showing a certification of his diplomatic immunity at birth. And of course, we battled over that. But here's the background on the decision. The government recognized and then denied his birthright citizenship status. And here's more. Ambassadors and other public ministers hold full diplomatic immunity, and federal law in effect when he was born voided a bunch of other things. And with limited exceptions, this diplomatic immunity does extend to the family. Okay, so immunity goes to the family. Consuls have immunity only for their official acts, however. So some details and background there. Now, we do not know exactly when and how the president received Dr. Moncada as an attaché or admitted him as a consul because the paper trail has faded over 70 years. Ambiguities and gaps in the remaining records lead to a dispute over his title and work, which determines the scope of his immunity. Moncada claims that his father served as consul when he was born and cites documents, and Truman also recognized him as consul of Nicaragua. But confusingly, a July 1950 UN document lists Moncada as both Consul New York and attaché, and several government records show that Moncada, Dr. the dad, served as an attaché, which means full immunity for everybody. But still, the government repeatedly recognized him, and it concluded at one point until 2017 when they said, nope, you're an attaché, sorry. So you are not a citizen. So he sued, of course, we're in court now, and he appealed. Now they say in their holding, sorry, not a citizen. He was born in the United States. So the only phrase that we need to consider here is this one, subject to the jurisdiction thereof. What does it mean? When ratified, the clause was understood to exclude non-citizens who belong to the families of foreign governments. This exclusion incorporated long-standing international law, right? Or if we want to do like civilized business with other nations, you don't prosecute each other and you just guarantee that. So when you send your people, we won't take them into custody, and we're not going to take your people into custody and draw, it'll be fair. And we can negotiate. Now, the question of immunity goes to the president's duty. The president has a duty to receive foreign ambassadors, and lots of law. Okay, all these are, citing the laws, so on. So here, Congress's citizenship powers under Article 1 and the 14th Amendment, they intersect with the president's diplomatic reception powers, and Article 3 powers also overlap. And so there's a lot of different interests at play here. Now, to review, Moncada's claim to birthright citizenship depends on whether he was born subject to the jurisdiction thereof. And of course, that depends on the status of his daddy. Now, we hold that the certificate is not conclusive here, so we may look beyond it to other evidence to see if the lower level court made a clear error. And they say they didn't. The president's exclusive power to receive these people is in the Constitution. Lots more case law here. Second case, application of this case, Supreme Court precedent, fast forwarding. And they say, okay, so now, while a certificate may be important evidence for courts to consider, it's not enough alone. It's just their view of the facts. And here, as explained below, there is conflicting evidence on the record. And so we need to review the findings from the lower level court finally. A person claiming United States citizenship bears the burden of producing substantial credible evidence to support that. Now, this burden matches the gravity of the task, saying evidence of a passport is substantial evidence of your citizenship, but there was conflicting evidence here. And Moncada presented evidence to the contrary, saying my dad was actually not somebody who had total immunity. And so in conclusion, in the absence of a controlling provision of the Constitution, we must give full effect to our country's guarantee of birthright citizenship to those who were subject to its jurisdiction. He was not. The Constitution confers on the president alone the legal duty to receive diplomats, and the president can immunize those diplomats from the jurisdiction of the United States. They are not subject officially. But 2 centuries of cases teach that whether a president has, in fact, received and immunized a person is a question of judicial inquiry. This is so, even so, when the secretary certifies one view, the courts can still get involved. And it's especially so when this merges into birthright citizenship issues, which we have jurisdiction over. Now, the district court, they write, did not clearly err in finding clear and convincing evidence that proved that Moncada was born with immunity. And so, therefore, he did not acquire birthright citizenship. The district court also observed that it concluded it's impossible to conclude that this is justice. And they say, we share our concerns about this. Like, this dude is getting stripped of his citizenship. The government, for its part, concedes that its decades of mistakes led to a very unfortunate and regrettable situation. But as inequitable as this result is, courts lack the equitable power to remedy the government's errors by granting this guy citizenship. And so formality is a virtue of birthright citizenship. It requires no inquiry into lineage, but is restricted only by place and jurisdiction. Yet when circumstances leave a person immune from the jurisdiction of the United States at birth, this same formality requires a court to give full effect to that restriction. Thus, we affirm the judgment of the district court, and that guy does not have birthright citizenship affirmed. Because that is the Constitution. You might not like it. If you don't like the subject to the jurisdiction requirement, okay, you can amend the Constitution. Good luck on that. But it says subject to the jurisdiction thereof as an independent clause because that's what it means. Now, this is different than the situation involving an illegal alien who illegally comes into the country and then drops a baby down and calls that kid an American citizen, even though they're in violation of the law. Are they subject to the jurisdiction? Do they come and acquiesce and enter into an agreement? Do they become like a consul versus an attaché? Do they have some lawful permission to be here, to subject themselves to our jurisdiction and agree to abide by it and let us know you're even here in the building? No, they don't. And instead, they just want to say that it's just a geography. As long as you're physically in the borders of the United States and you plop a baby here, even if you're a terrorist, even if you broke into our country, even if you're the worst, flying your Guatemalan, Mexican flags all over the place, you still, as an invader to our country, now can have citizenship. Give me a break. Okay, it's ridiculous. It's never how it was supposed to be interpreted, and it has been interpreted that way by a lot of people who are perverting it. But now we're seeing this issue work its way up to the Supreme Court. And this is a step in the right direction, right? Formality is a virtue of birthright citizenship. That's right. And you got to be subject to the jurisdiction thereof. You can't be an illegal invader and then say, well, just because you can arrest me for breaking your laws, that is subject to the jurisdiction. Answer is that is wrong. Hopefully we'll find the Supreme Court says the same, but a nice decision over from the Ninth Circuit coming down. Big win for It's Rubio. And I'd be curious to know more about what this guy did to anger somebody and get this back on the radar. But of course, more will be revealed on that. No doubt. We'll see what the Supreme Court says. But Ted Cruz is also saying, so non-citizens must go. And Ted Cruz went down to El Salvador with Nayib Bukele to talk about what's going on down there.
In your meeting with Mr. Bukele, are you going to ask him to receive migrants that are now detained in the U.S., migrants from different nationalities, as it happened before with the Venezuelans?
Well, I will say President Trump and President Bukele have a very good relationship, and they have been negotiating the terms of deportations from the United States to El Salvador. President Bukele has been an important partner in responding to what has been a crisis in the United States for the last 4 years. Unfortunately, the previous president of the United States, Joe Biden, under his administration, we had effectively an open border for 4 years. We saw over 12 million illegal immigrants come into the United States. We saw murderers and rapists and gang members released into America, and we saw countless Americans murdered and the victims of violent crime because of those open borders.
Yeah, and Van Hollen went down there.
In the United States, the rate of illegal border crossings dropped 99% when President Trump was sworn back into office. That is the difference between having a leader who will enforce the law and protect your citizens and having a leader who is complicit with open borders. President Bukele has demonstrated similar leadership here in El Salvador. In both instances, you have a leader elected by the people who is not going to surrender to the cartels and the criminals, but rather is going to protect the people. And I think the consequence of that, securing the border in the United States, treating the gang members and the cartels as terrorists, and doing whatever is necessary to keep our citizens safe, I think that's the right approach.
Yes, and we have to enforce our laws. What good is having a bunch of laws on the books if they're just kind of recommendations? If actually the illegal alien population is now going to be the new civil rights movement, which is what it's turning into, okay? How dare you be so cruel? And all of they deserve more constitutional rights and all of this stuff. It's going to be the new movement. So we're watching it right now because they want the foreign invasion to occur because they're sick of people in America who are demanding American values, saying we should expect more from our government. They'd rather just bring in everybody else from all over the world who doesn't understand the sanctity of the Constitution or the foundation of our country, so they can water the whole place down and rebuild it in their image. They're doing it in California, Chicago, New York, and we're not going to let them happen here. So we're going to keep our eye on this. Birthright citizenship is a major component of, I think, the trifecta. You got to close the border, you got to handle apportionment, and you got to handle birthright citizenship. And then we'll have a good handle on our immigration system, and we can restore America to excellence. All right, so we got more business to attend to here, my friends. And let's keep this train on the tracks, shall we? Because we got this judge. A criminally charged judge loses. A big one. This is the case of the backdoor judge, Hannah C. Dugan, who allowed an illegal alien to exit her back door in her courtroom in the middle of court proceedings when there were victims in the courtroom that defendant allegedly beat. She filed a motion to dismiss her criminal charges. She's being prosecuted in the Eastern District of Wisconsin, and the court just came down with a decision and order, and they are explaining to us what's going to happen next with the backdoor judge. And here's what we've got. They say the court writes, Hannah Dugan, she moves to dismiss the indictment. She was charged with a couple of counts. 1, concealing a person from arrest under 18 U.S. Code 1071, and obstruction of a removal proceedings, Section 1505. Now, summarize, the court writes, the government alleges that Doogie, a state court judge, concealed from arrest the apprehension of a person wanted by federal immigration authorities. She was the judge handling the pretrial proceedings in the case. The lower level judge in this case, not Dugan, issued a recommendation that the motion be denied. Okay, so you got magistrate judges, and then this is the actual district court judge. Now, and we read through that one, right? The lower level recommendation. Now this is the official order. So Dugan objects, requiring me, the next level judge, to review the matter de novo, which means I'm going to look at everything fresh. You want to object, you don't like the lower level magistrate judge's ruling, no problem. I'm the real judge, so then I'll take a look at it. Fresh, with a fresh set of eyes. So she does. When considering a motion to dismiss, the court limits its review to the face of the indictment, so whatever the government says, assumes all facts are true in the indictment, and views the facts in a light most favorable to the government, which makes sense. We're going to give the government every benefit of the doubt. And if you still win and there's no case here, then we have to dismiss your case, okay? Because there's nothing they can do. So the parties briefed, and now we're considering a motion to dismiss. So here are the charges. Of course, the first one was she concealed this person, this illegal EFR, so that he wouldn't get caught by ICE. Shoved him out the back door. Did the same thing here. She also obstructed the proceedings. Remember, she went up to ICE. She confronted them. She says, you need a judicial warrant if you want to arrest him. They said, no, giant judge. No, we don't. Upon learning that they had an administrative warrant, she said, you should leave this area and go to the chief judge's office, if you remember that. She also addressed the case off the record. Okay, so this illegal alien in her courtroom who beat people, allegedly, she handled it without calling the case publicly. This is the matter of CR 2025 versus this illegal alien. Any parties' appearances, please. Both sides saying, do we have victims in the court? Your Honor, victims' rights advocate, victims are in the courtroom here. None of it happened. She just said, why don't you guys come up here to the bench and the podium? They walked right up there and said, we're going to go and move your date. We're just going to do a quick continuance on this thing. We'll bump it out 2 weeks. Do we have anything in April? Yeah, okay, bump it out. And talk to the clerk. Okay, just talk to her. We'll get you a new date. And you, illegal alien, come out with me this back door. And the prosecutor didn't know anything about it. The victims didn't know anything about it. She escaped him. She directed him to use her back door, courtroom 615. And then said he could appear by Zoom for the next proceeding so he didn't get picked up by ICE, because illegal aliens get premium version of America. It's like America Max Ultra plan. It's pretty good. You don't have to have licenses or registration. You get free housing. You get free cell phones. Everybody calls you a hero. When you traffic humans into our country, you have a bunch of senators out there supporting you. Free Kilmar. All of them. You have lunatics singing songs in pink outfits. Free Kilmar, whatever they were singing. Because they're nuts. They get premium America, baby. Everybody else doesn't. You get tickets, you get arrested, they impound your car, you don't pay your registration, you're driving on a suspended license, your car's impounded for 30 days. Good luck. You got to go pay thousands of dollars to get it out. Not illegals, though. They call the FBI and they just are allowed to run rampant throughout our country, flipping U-turns, killing and executing families. In her motion, Doogie said that she enjoys absolute immunity. If she wants to let illegal aliens use her back door, she can do it every single day. She's got immunity to do it, and she can do it. She also says this prosecution violates the 10th Amendment, and she said something about vertical separation of powers, which basically got laughed at by the lawyer. He's like, what are you talking about? The magistrate judge concluded that while the Supreme Court did grant judges from civil liability, there was no rule that said you get criminal immunity. She concluded, the lower judge, that the 10th Amendment claim required the assessment of disputed facts, and can't do that in a motion, so we could talk about that if you think it's like a separation of powers problem, but we got to have facts on that. That will happen as the trial progresses, so we can't dismiss at this stage. And finally, the lower judge rejected the constitutional avoidance argument, which was Doogie just saying that This is going to cause a real predicament because we've got the federal government charging somebody who works in a state government, and we just want to avoid those types of conflicts, which is very interesting when their party prosecuted the president 4 times and raided his house. So in her objections, she talks about immunity. She begins with the proposition that every act alleged in the indictment is literally part of a judge's job, so she can just take aliens out the back door no matter what. In other words, they're all official acts, so she's protected. She then says that immunity is not restricted to the civil sphere. It also protects against criminal liability for most official acts, right? So you can actually commit crimes and you're good. She admits 3 exceptions, though, to this rule of judicial immunity. She says if it's wholly unofficial, then it won't count. Like, for example, a judge who murders their wife in their home, or a judge who shares CP on his own time. But what if the judge shared CP while in the judge's robe at the courthouse? Is that protected? Or what if a judge murders somebody? We made this analogy. We said, what if she just shot somebody in the head right in the courtroom? I executed my judgment. I think the judgment was death, and he's now dead. So I have judicial immunity. Could she get away with that? According to her argument, according to her rule, yes. Graft or sexual gratification for which collateral judicial acts are the inducement. So it's like an abuse of your position of power. And official acts that deprive people of their constitutional rights under statutes. If a judge does any of those things, you're not immune. But she says, Doogie, that her case involves none of these exceptions. So I do have immunity. All of the acts alleged in the indictments were done as her capacity as judge. Like, I was wearing a robe. Hello. The indictment alleges no graft or self-interest, such as a bribe or a kickback. Not anything specific, but she was getting her rocks off and getting a dopamine hit for fighting the power and fighting Trump and fighting on the behalf of the downtrodden illegal aliens who beat people in her jurisdiction. And there is no allegation that she violated any individual rights protected by the amendments. And you can make an argument that she violated the victim's rights by continuing the case without having them heard by the prosecutor, violated the state's rights by continuing the case without input from the government. But okay. But while the indictment does allege that Doogie knowingly concealed EFR and corruptly obstructed, she says, I'm still immune from the acts. Okay, so my intent may have been bad, but the acts are what I've been charged for. So she might have, corruptly wanted to win against Trump and stop this, but the acts are immune because she's a judge and she's just showing somebody an exit in her courtroom. So that's immune. And she's allowed to talk to people outside of her courtroom. So that's a judicial act. So all of those things can't be obstruction, even if intentionally she was obstructing, is her argument. The government responds that the Supreme Court has never recognized judicial immunity from criminal liability. And what is she talking about? And that her assumption of immunity inverts the entire analysis. The government says that her creation of categorical exceptions to immunity is an attempt to explain away the many historical prosecutions in a gerrymandered way, one which excludes the conduct here. Okay, so she's cherry picking a bunch of cases and she's like, well, we can create these rules based upon the outcomes in these other cases and then and she finds the best cases that are not judges escaping illegal aliens, which probably has never happened before. So she says, well, are clearly different than the other ones. They all got prosecuted for these reasons, but that's different. There are exceptions. Now, the government says, I don't know where she made that up from, but even if a doctrine of immunity for judicial acts existed, the evidence in this case will show that she went beyond her judicial role. Instead, they say all events arose from her unilateral, non-judicial, unofficial actions outside the role of a Wisconsin state judge by obstructing a federal immigration matter over which she had no authority. Although the lower level judge allowed that some of the allegations described in the conduct could be considered part of the judge's job, like anything individually might, the judge clarified that Doogie was not being prosecuted for her opining on the fly. That's fine. She wasn't being prosecuted for managing her courtroom or allowing someone to appear by Zoom. That's not, individually, sure, she can make somebody appear by Zoom. Yeah, that's fine. Can you continue a case in court? Of course. Happens every day. Tons. Most court appearances are basically continuances. You just show up and it's working and you get a continuance. So rather, The indictment charged specific violation. So that's all normal. But when you bundle them up together, it was obstruction. She was trying to escape an illegal out of her courtroom. The indictment bundles them together and says it's obstruction, okay? Now, the government concludes that she is not immune simply because she encountered federal agents. And so the court writes, the dispute between the parties boils down to this. Doogie posits as a general rule of immunity that judges are immune. According to the government, there is no general rule of immunity. And what Dugan calls exceptions are simply examples of the types of prosecutions that have been brought against judges. And this judge says a review of the history reveals the government has the better argument. Now, the concept of judicial immunity goes back to 1607 in the Star Chamber. We've talked about it, where a judge who, back in England, a judge who presided over a murder trial was hauled and haled into a rival court and charged with conspiracy. Okay, so one judge is now said, well, you convicted this dude of murder, and now you're part of the conspiracy, and we're suing you. Lord Coke said, a judge, for anything done by him as a judge, shall not be drawn into question except before the king himself, right? Immunity. Back in England. So relying on this, early American courts granted immunity in civil cases. At times, they even stated the rule more broadly. But the Supreme Court in the United States first addressed the issue back in 1869, a case called Randall versus Brigham, where a lawyer filed a civil action against a state court judge, saying the judge wrongfully removed him from the state bar. Now, relying on this, the court said the judge is immune. So you can't sue him for that. And the court said that's all valid. Now, the court also clarified, though, that this exemption of judges from civil liability cannot be affected by the motives for which their judicial acts are performed, and the purity of their motives cannot in this way be the subject of a judicial inquiry. And we saw a lot of this same concept with Trump, remember, because they can't substitute their judgments in. The president did something for a reason, this judge did something for a reason, and so you're not necessarily analyzing that rationale, because that's what immunity is, right? It's like you are immune from the allegations. It doesn't mean you're only immune if you did it for the right reason. Like, that's the power of immunity. Now, in other words, you don't have to defend your decision because you're immune from that. Now, in Pearson versus Ray, the court granted immunity to a judge sued under Section 1983 civil rights claim, saying that the civil rights protesters were being prosecuted. And the court said that there is judicial immunity in civil actions. Got it. And so in some, there's a long line of stuff that says there is some money damage immunity. But the court, however, has recognized that a judge is not absolutely immune from criminal liability. In fact, in this Virginia case, a state court judge was charged with excluding black persons from grand and petite juries. And in declining to grant habeas relief to the judge, the court spent a lot of this discussing a lot of things. O'Shea, some more case law, fast forwarding, and more case law in Pulliam. So the court acknowledges that granting immunity from damages under 1983 was a little bit different than the one here. And we're also unmoved by the complaint that injunctive relief carried with it the threat of contempt. Now, Doogie is citing two cases. She says, I am immune. And she cites those here. But it's unclear, they say, from her case law, whether the courts would apply the same rule to a case like this, right? Distinguishing these cases, and a lot of it is just going through those cases to just show, Dugan, your cases are not exactly on point. Now, finally, Dugan appeals to Trump versus United States, the Supreme Court decision. This was the three-bucket decision that we talk a lot about. Absolute immunity for the president for presidential duties and responsibilities. Presumption of immunity for anything that's even within the bounds of the president's duties. You get a presumption of immunity. And then for things that are clearly not, you get no immunity. So she says Trump is entitled to absolute immunity for his core constitutional powers, and so I should have it too. She says that the court relied on judicial immunity that they extended to the president, right? So she's saying the Supreme Court says judges had it first, actually. The court concluded, based on separation of powers, that immunity was required to safeguard the independence and the effective functioning of the executive branch, right? You don't get to come in and say, well, Trump did that thing for a bad reason. If it's an official act, you don't get to substitute your judgment for that. That's the point. You're not the president, so you don't get to decide. Now, these same concerns do not arise, though, when one of the many nation's judges is subject to prosecution, okay? The president has constitutional duties, and we can't let that person be attacked. But further, while the court relied on a previous decision in Nixon, which granted the president immunity from civil damages, the court said nothing, right? That was absolutely true about criminal immunity for judges. And we read through that decision in detail. Now, ultimately, as the Supreme Court has stated, the officials seeking absolute immunity must show that they're entitled to it. And Dugin has not done so here. This is not to gainsay the very real concerns that she raises. She wonders why. If official acts enjoy no immunity, why a judge could not be prosecuted for handling contraband during a trial or scheduling a hearing in a matter that inconveniences federal law enforcement officers. What? Like obstruction? Okay, now saying that is not the way to the criminal justice system operates, and this is common sense, she says, is just unsatisfying, so that's not good enough. As the 11th Circuit noted in permitting a prosecution of a judge for bribery, this is not a case in which a judge has been prosecuted for official acts. In a case, there may be a common law immunity. If it was official, there might be immunity. But this leads to the government's fallback position, saying she's not being prosecuted for official acts in the ordinary course of her duties, not even charging her for those. Instead, the government says the events alleged in the indictment arise from her unilateral, non-judicial, unofficial actions outside the role of a judge. Now, while it would be improper to consider facts right now outside of the indictment, this is a motion to dismiss, not a trial in the papers, viewing the facts that are alleged in a light most favorable to the government, since we might be ruling against them, as I must at this stage, and accounting for the indictment's allegation that she knowingly concealed this illegal and acted corruptly, I cannot say, as a matter of law, that her conduct falls within even this more limited version of immunity that she claims exists. There is no basis for granting immunity simply because some of the allegations in the indictment are conduct that could be considered part of a judge's job, right? Just because, like, yeah, you can manage your calendar and yeah, you can issue continuances. That's all true. But you did it in the facilitation and the obstruction of a federal arrest. As the judge noted, the same is true in bribery, where judges were prosecuted for bribery. Now, Doogie argues that the gravamen of the offense is the bribe, right? It's got to be something more than just letting him escape. But the cases don't support her distinction that she's trying to draw. Or, as the government puts it, a judge may use judicial acts or tools as means to accomplish an unlawful end. And to the extent that Dugin says that the act requires Judges Act for self-gratification, like if you're going to charge her, it's got to be she wanted to get rich or she wanted to go, get some financial benefit. There's no authority for that proposition that the motive must be financial for it to be corrupt. She was excited as hell to be a part of the resistance. And to the extent defendant contends a court cannot inquire into the motives, the same could be said about bribery cases. And even if a more limited version of immunity exists, it doesn't support dismissal of this indictment. And so next, her 10th Amendment argument. She says, well, there's she cites no authority. All right, yeah, there you go. No authority for the proposition that federal criminal statutes may not be applied to state court judges, right? Now, it's true the Constitution does establish a system of dual sovereignty, right? Anything in 10th Amendment, anything that's not in the Constitution is reserved back to the states. And so I think she's saying that I am not officially approved to be prosecuted. You are prosecuting me, and so that's a separation of powers problems. Now, although the states surrendered many of their powers to the new federal government, we do have a federalist system. We've got two federal and state governments. But the state law permits judges to be prosecuted, of course. While this case involves the routine work, she says, it's not something that can be decided right now in a motion to dismiss. This state law permits discipline of judges for ethical violations, and the rules don't preclude the bringing of federal charges against you under the 10th Amendment. She cites some other cases. And then finally, Dugin talks about avoidance, just saying, well, we don't want the government fighting with itself. The canon of constitutional avoidance comes into play only when, after the application of textual analysis, a statute is found to be susceptible of more than one construction. In other words, you can read the statute multiple ways. And when you read a statute, like the statute is written poorly because our congresspeople are idiots, you interpret it in a way that's not going to cause more conflict. That's the avoidance. Not this. She cites no case finding these terms would apply here. And in Snyder, there was a different decision. And so it is therefore ordered. Judge Dugan loses. The magistrate judge's recommendation is adopted, and Doogie's motion to dismiss is denied. It's further ordered this matter scheduled for another in-court hearing on Wednesday next week. And so we'll keep our eye on this one. And this was signed by Lynn Alderman. And my understanding is that's a very liberal judge. I could be wrong about that, but I thought I did read it. Now, good news here that this illegal alien was actually caught by ICE and hopefully is being processed for deportation, and his co-conspirators like Doogie are getting prosecuted. But the problem is much broader. And here is Tulsi Gabbard from the Oval Office cabinet meeting explaining what's coming next for the cartel bosses and what's happening with the DEA and FBI all across America.
She's becoming a bigger and bigger star every day. She found a lot of good things. Go ahead.
Thank you, sir. As we approach Labor Day weekend here, this is just such a great opportunity really to recognize your leadership as a true champion for working people. And I know we'll hear, as we go around the table here, how your focus singularly on putting the well-being and interests of the American people first is that common thread that we're seeing in your policies being implemented across your administration. For ODNI, number one, our focus is and must always be making sure that our intelligence community is focused on our mission, keeping the American people safe, secure, and free. We're doing great work on this front. I'll point out our National Counterterrorism Center, led by Director Joe Kent, are working across different agencies with Homeland Security, DEA, FBI, and others to catch terrorists, both those who are trying to come into our country, those who may already be in our country. They are finding the worst of the cartel bosses and making sure that they're not able to continue to wreak havoc and terror in our communities. Secondly, Mr. President, you have charged me with the mission of finding the truth and telling the truth to the American people. And we've exposed some of the worst examples of the weaponization of intelligence in the last several weeks. I will continue down that mission and that path wherever it leads. Transparency, telling the truth, is what will drive true accountability for the American people who deserve nothing less. And lastly, Mr. President, all of us are charged with being good stewards of taxpayer dollars. I've gone through a reorganization for ODNI that we've announced in the last week. We've cut nearly half of redundant, unnecessary functions within ODNI, saving taxpayers over $700 million a year. We will continue focusing on our core mission in keeping the American people safe, and appreciate your leadership and your focus on this most critical task.
Yeah, Tulsi Gabbard. All right, so we see the administration is firing on all cylinders. The DOJ winning motions to dismiss against the backdoor judge. And it's actually going to be curious if this case goes to trial, right? We're going to see if she wants to have this all splayed out in front of the public to see. She's got a court date coming up next week. So we'll keep our eye on this one. But in addition to what's happening domestically, Tulsi's helping to look around the rest of the world to go after the cartel bosses and make sure our country is safe. And we appreciate the work for once caring about America's border and American integrity. And we'll keep our eye on this case. All right, my friends. What a beautiful day and an amazing stream it has been. If you're just joining us, quick recap on what we talked about, and then we'll hear from you. We talked about the shooting that happened in Minneapolis and about the background on the shooter, and really about how the left is reacting to this. Like, shut up with your prayers. Don't be mean to trans people, and just forget about the dead kids who got shot at a Catholic mass. We also heard from this young man. Shout out to Victor, who laid his body on top of him, and we send prayers to everybody who was involved and who is still recovering from this horrific scene. Then we turned our attention over to the Supreme Court, baby, because we got D. John Sauer, who submitted this one into SCOTUS, saying, can you please do something about these AIDS doctors and these Global Health Council maniacs? Because we're now ordered to pay out billions of dollars to them very soon, and the DC Circuit is stalling us out. So please do something about this. We know you're on vacation, but put down the mojitos and do something. We then talked about birthright citizenship, a good decision, which I think it's different. It's not exactly on point with illegal aliens, but it is helping to flesh out this idea of what does subject to the jurisdiction thereof mean, and are illegal aliens subject to the jurisdiction thereof, the United States, when they break into our country and plot babies down? We don't think so. We'll see what the Supreme Court says about this. It is on their radar, and so we'll keep our eye on it. We heard Ted Cruz is down in El Salvador. Don't know if Van Hollen's down there or what, but Dugan, also backdoor judge, lost her motion to dismiss. She was hoping she could get this granted and have her case dismissed for letting an illegal alien use her backdoor, but that's not going to happen. So another hearing coming up in September. We'll have discovery, may have a trial scheduled soon, and we'll be looking forward to that one. We also heard from Tulsi, who's out there explaining what she's up to, and we're happy to hear about it. But now, my friends, it is time to hear from you. And thank you for being here. Thanks for subscribing to our channel if you haven't already done so. And thanks for your great comments and your donos in the house today that we're reading right now. And we've got this one coming in. What's up? King of Biltong is in the house. Donut John, thank you for clipping for us today. Oh my gosh, what's going on over here? Hey, we got a new baby in the house, and yes, it is Wednesday. Happy Wednesday, my friends. Indeed, it is Wednesday. Which, doesn't she have a new show? I haven't watched it. Cardio Casey, what's up? Cardio Casey in the house. Cardio's good. I've been thinking about the fitness challenge. And, you know, how I got to work on my cardio. Yeah, because I can do the pull-ups and the push-ups, but if it's about time, the CrossFit bros are going to have a real advantage on that one. What's up, Cardio Casey? Thanks for becoming a shout-out membo. Mel Snare, what's up, Mel Snare? New baby in the house. Hey, love what you bring, RG. Keep it up. Thank you, Mel Snare. Thanks for being here for 9 months. That's a full term. It's a long time. You're a full human. We appreciate it, Mel. Thanks for joining us and for supporting us. Very glad to have you here. We appreciate you. The Mighty Kraken. Somebody owes me $10, LOL. Oh, yeah, the Mighty Kraken. Was that you this morning who said this person was a trans dude? Was that the comment this morning? You called it a T. You're like, it's going to be a T. And it turned out it was. All right, you're right. Hey, Bucky's is Rome. I'm kind of confused on the D.C. federal courts and the D.C. juries not indicting Democrats. Yeah, that's right. We talked about that this morning on the Membo stream. The subway launcher is not getting indicted out of D.C. because the D.C. citizens love people who attack federal agents, apparently. Unless you're a J6er, unless you're a MAGA person, if you hurt or assault a cop in any way, solitary confinement in D.C. if you're on the right, but if you throw Subway sandwiches at federal officers in the shoulder, hitting them in an act of assault rather than peacefully protesting somewhere, then no charges for you. So this is why, you know, we've said this for years now. Location, location, location. If you're in a blue county, man, it's rough if you're on the wrong side. So I always thought one of the advantages of a federal court was that as they issue jury summons for multiple states around the district the court is in, for instance, in Western Kentucky, the feds get a jury from Indiana, Illinois, Tennessee, Missouri, and Ohio. So why is that not happening in the D.C. juries in the federal courts in D.C.? Yeah, I'd have to see what's going on in Western Kentucky. It doesn't make sense to me that if in a Western Kentucky case that you'd have a Illinois juror on there, right? I think they're going to be pooling from their jurisdiction. So yeah, I mean, the jury should be like in the jurisdiction, right? You don't just get to go like to California and pick people. So I'd be curious what's going on over there. Chubby, what's up? Parents using their child's mental illness for their own internet clout. Hope they use Michigan, I think it was, precedent and charge the parents. Was it? Yeah, it was the Crumbly case. It was the Ethan Crumbly. Remember his parents got charged, and I think they got convicted too. We didn't cover too much of that case. We covered it when it happened, but the shooting cases are it's just like horrific. Bucky's is Rome. Nothing to see here, just the Democrat governor and lieutenant governor of Minnesota. What? Protect trans. Yeah, they love the tease, man. Strange. Protect trans kids. They love it. Which you just protect the kids and not turn them into trans would be a good idea. Hey, Sodium Soldier. Somebody owes me $10, LOL, sent from my Rumble account by accident, Mighty Kraken. Good to see you, Sodium Soldier. It was you. Yeah, the name was different from this morning. Yeah, and so, do I owe you 10? Did I accept that bet? I don't know if I did. I thought you probably might be right. I thought it was like somebody. I thought I said somebody will take you up on it. But if I owe you $10, then that's fair. It's only fair. FD man, Trey Dumbass the female mass shooter was a trans male, and now you have a trans female. The mayor of Minneapolis looks and sounds like Gavin Newsom 2.0 from FD Man. Thank you, FD Man. Hey, Viva! What's up, Viva? Shout out to our friends from Viva. Man, we really appreciate Viva. We got to connect with him soon. Thank you, Viva, for rating our stream. Shout out to Viva, who is right next door on the Rumbles, on the YouTubes, on the locals. He's good friends with Robert Barnes, who we also like. So Christians are attacked while praying. And this MFer is condemning praying while double speaking about supporting them. You just can't make this garbage up. Yeah, and it's interesting also to hear somebody who is not a Catholic talking to Catholics and Christians. He's not a Christian. Talking to other people about your thoughts and prayers and just shove it. We don't want it. Okay, what do you want? You want gun control? You want to have more power and more trans kids? Like you don't even want to talk about the cause? Or was this person on hormones? Was this person on testosterone or inhibitors, on psycho-altering drugs, right? SSRIs? What was going on? Can't talk about it because it's hateful speech. It's hate speech, right? Bucky's is Rome. Here's a hot take. The church calls me a Nazi for thinking trans flags shouldn't be in churches. They do. And the white Democrats in Minneapolis voted for this. Are you Episcopalian? They voted to want these people to use the bathroom and school showers with your daughters. These same people will sacrifice your moms and daughters to have open borders and millions of illegals. Now they're going to vote to take gun rights away and even go even harder on banning what they consider hate speech. This on Democrats and their voters. Yeah, it's pretty disgusting behavior. And I honestly don't understand why they would do that to their own kids. Alan Harkin. God bless Alan. Look at this nice little cat with this nice little flame. Is he going camping or something? What's going on over there? Alan Harkin. What's up, Alan? Thanks for the nice dono, my man. Good to see you again. Hey, great information from you as usual. It is a rare talent to bring forth the often melancholy legal news of the day in a way that is educational with a bit of humor. We're all very proud of you. Alan Harkin, thank you for saying that, my friend. And thanks for the very nice dono. Thanks for watching on Rumble and for being here. It is. It's kind of a hard thing, especially when you got like shootings and dead 8-year-olds. You're like, oh my gosh. So we appreciate you, Alan. Thanks for supporting us, my man. Thanks for the generous dono and for navigating through it with us. And, the shooting stuff obviously is tragic. And so we send our prayers. Thank you, Alan. Very nice. FD man. Trey did the Benghazi congressional investigation and gave the Obama administration clean hands for their lack of a response to the attack on the consulate and the death of a U.S. ambassador. Trey's a big piece of poop. Yeah, we're not fans of Trey here, as you've probably heard with our mocking of his voice. Buffalo Betsy. My God, listening to that precious baby describe something he should have never witnessed or been a part of, it makes me effing sick. I know. I hope we can get an update on Victor saying big prayers for that courageous young man. I know. I mean, it's just like, it's like awe-inspiring. And it's like, oh my gosh, man. It just, the humanity, it just triggers things for sure. Thank you, Buffalo. Bucky's is Rome says, Denver now has 200,000 illegals that they know of and enacted gun control laws on American citizens, raised taxes on its American citizens, and are now doing the gay Olympics. Republicans don't have what it takes to stop with the power that they have in the federal government. Denver announces the gay games. What's the sports? Is it jousting? Are they jousting each other? This old guy, what's up? I think we need a little brain check. We talk about $2 billion like it's nothing, but $2 billion $1 bills would weigh 4.41 million pounds or 2,200 tons. Wrap your brain around that. Man, I just think about like, I used to run a law firm. We had a nice staff. We had a bunch of lawyers. We had a whole thing going on. It was, our business was beautiful. And it's a lot of work to make $1 million. I know it's a lot. It takes whole lots of work to get it there. That's 1 million. So now you try to get to $1 billion. And like, I know what work went into us generating, a 7-figure year. And it's a lot of work. And we pay a lot of taxes on that work. And so to have all of that money that we don't have just being shoveled out around the country is insane. It actually costs us something in the term of inflation and the degradation of our dollar. Lord of Illusion, what's up? The spending argument I'd make to court if Congress passes a law and doesn't enforce it to a T with plea deals, etc., is how is that different from him choosing how to spend the budget he is allocated? Yeah, so this is on the impoundment stuff, I think, Lord of Illusion. Yeah, so personally, I think that our structure is brilliant in that it's not an exact like order. Like Congress can't order the president to do something like that because that makes Congress over the president. So Congress can spend things and then the president can take what they do and it's separate and the president can do something with it. And if they have a disagreement, like we're on the same team, we're on the same country, so we should agree on things and want to negotiate these out. But it's not an order, and the president can't order Congress to do anything. So that's by design, okay? The whole thesis is you want to decentralize power because the founders recognize that what happens with societies is they gobble up bureaucratic power, and then the people are the ones who get taken advantage of. So you want to decentralize it and break it up. If Congress can order the president to do something, then the Congress is in charge. So I'm really glad, actually, that Trump is fighting this. I think that Nixon and other presidents should fight it. They should impound a lot of stuff. Congress is like kids in a candy store with no limit. There's nobody at the clerk, all right? Everybody's just ransacking everything. It's like the Black Friday specials. Everybody's coming out with multiple TVs. They're all Congress people. 5 TVs. No one else gets TVs, but Congress has 5 of them. So the president should take care. And when Congress is not doing necessary and proper behavior, they should be dispossessed. E. Texley. What about the male anchor babies who have signed up for the draft? That seems like a possible wrinkle. Male anchor babies who have signed up for the draft. So so I don't know about the draft. Does the draft say you have to be a citizen to fight, or can you be a visa, holder in order to join the military or to be a part of the draft? I don't know, but I don't think that just because I think actually they would not, that doesn't give them any right to citizenship, just like that other dude. Like they gave him a passport multiple times, multiple oaths, all the things, still not. So now if you want to change the law and create an exception for that, then you could. But under the 14th Amendment, I don't think that doesn't matter at all. You're an anchor baby. When you were born, you were not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. The fact that you went and signed up for the draft or registered with the Selective Service doesn't automatically grandfather you in as a citizen, right? Pinochet helicopter in the house, the best helicopter ride you've ever been on. Says, to lawfully possess a firearm in Massachusetts, I have to meet criteria and get a special ID. Wow, it's because you're an American. I am subject to the jurisdiction of Massachusetts to lawfully have my guns. Birthright citizenship for the Second Amendment. From Pinochet helicopter tours. So, in other words, illegal aliens should not have firearms, which makes total sense because they're illegal in violation of our country's laws. They're in an open state of being lawless. So why would they have the right to possess a firearm? You don't have a right to possess a firearm if you're in the middle of a criminal activity. Bucky's is Rome. Dear America, teach your daughters how to fight. Okay, felons don't have firearm rights and all these other things. These people are in open violation of the law. Bucky's is Rome, and maybe they should, right? But Bucky's is Rome says, for felon citizens. But anyways, dear America, teach your daughters how to fight. This Scottish girl was arrested for wielding an axe, a knife, to protect her sister from immigrants. From an immigrant officially becomes a legend. Yeah. Yeah, I think people are getting pretty tired of the immigration stuff and all of the cultural, commingling. You are going to like these people. You have to, because we said so. Don't be a bigot. People, no, we're not going to allow that to happen. And I don't know the context of this, but sounds like she looks threatened and she's not playing, which I can relate to. Bucky's is Rome. This 12-year-old girl did more to protect herself and her sister from an illegal more than any politician in the UK and name any Democrat ran city in the United States. Man, shout out to this guy. That's an awesome photo, man. Good for her. That's awesome. King of Biltong is here. What's up, King of Biltong? Biltong is one of the highest protein snacks in the world. It has over 50% protein inside. It's packed with B12, creatine, iron, zinc, and more. You can get yours at biltongusa.com, and you can use code Robert. You'll save 10% off from our friend King of Biltong. Thank you, King. What's up, Bucky's is Rome is here. There you go. So there she is. Man, that's like, it's going meme-tastic all over the interwebs, huh? Deluxe Knight, what's up, Deluxe Knight? Farmer in the house says, hey, happy Labor Day weekend, everyone. We are headed out camping with our 3 fur babies. Last trip of the season before the late sweet corn and buckwheat harvest. God bless you all, watching the Watchers family. May we all finish the season with God's blessings. Amen, Deluxe Knight. Have a beautiful trip. Shout out to your wife and your fur babies. And I hope you get a nice helping of that very restorative nature that you deserve. Thanks for growing our food for us. Hey, brew on this, baby. Brew on this. This is hilarious. Rubio and Cruz talking about birthright citizenship when both of them tried to run for president and are ineligible. They're not birthright citizens. Yeah, and what was the story on that? Bree won this, or brew on this. I remember that. I don't remember Rubio's story, but Ted's was interesting. Like, wasn't he born like in Canada or something? And Rubio was also strange. McCain was strange. Obama is strange. It's like, why can't we just have like an authentic, like American who's just like obviously born here, who's going to lead our country? FD man, Shannon, in and out my back. FD man. Says, you have to watch And for Justice for All, a movie starring Al Pacino. Pacino is a defense lawyer, strong-armed by the system to defend a criminally corrupt judge. Judge's buddy is an ethics board member. Sounds good. Al Pacino's pretty good. I liked him. I didn't like him as much, but the movie Heat was amazing. FD man, here's a common theme among of these cases of judges and the decisions made regarding to case being heard in their court. Her action regarding the illegal alien was outside the jurisdiction of her court. Yeah, it was a federal operation, not her case. FD man says Shannon Dugan sounds like she hired lawyers from the same back of the comic book law school cert courses that she used to get her law degree. Could be true. Hey, Paige Huckabee. Good to see you, Paige. Grab the members only stream from this morning. Thanks for becoming a member and supporting us. And members, we'll have an after party, so we'll see you in just a quick moment. FD man says Dugan may plea out. She will not practice law again. Even a plea out will be a deterrent for other activists, lower state, county, and city judges. I don't know if she's going to plea. I mean, this might be her moment, See if she can draw a good jury. See if the jury will acquit her or hang. And then she'll write a book, and probably get a show on MSNBC. Hey, Rick D, what's up? Las Vegas PD raided the home of a couple with an arrest warrant. No one was home. The property had not been owned by the person they were looking for over 5 years. The city won't pay damages. Took me like 3 minutes on a public search to find the person they were looking for. Didn't live there. $25,000 in damage from Rick D. Wow. Yeah, I think a lot of those, I've worked with a lot of cops. I feel like a lot of officers, not all of them, are adrenaline junkies. Like they just need something. Relax. You don't have to go break down doors and kick in things. Like there's nobody in there. Just chill out. But it's still part of which I think you could relate to. You're like, man, I'm a cop. Let's go kick in some doors and arrest some bad guys. Like if I was a cop, let's go. But you got to pay for your damages, and they they shoot dogs and all sorts of things. It's terrible. FD man. Oh, butt darts. Rebecca Perry. Hey, what's up, Rebecca Perry? Thanks for being here. Good to have you. Hey, used to be a combat boot mom. Used to show up as Combat Boot Mom. Okay, so Rebecca Perry, which is we now know you, which is great. Nice to meet you. Says Combat Boot Mom, so they changed it on YouTube. So like the channel names, I think, or your usernames are different than channel names. So that happened to a lot of people. Hey, I'm so happy to be back. Today's shooting was horrendous and it was sad, but it's typical to hear the mayor use inflammatory language rather than helpful rhetoric. Blessings. Thank you for that. Combat Boot Mom in the house. Thanks for the nice dono. Good to have you back. I hope you had a nice hiatus. And don't ever leave us again. We got this one from FD Man. Another game would be bare naked. Hey, what's up? Steve-O in the house. 9 months, Steve-O. Good to see you, Steve-O. Time flies. Thanks to Rob and Co. for a great show. Thank you, Steve, for being here. 9 months, full baby. Congratulations to all of us. ... 9 says, on the church victim Victor, my friend Victor saved me. Like, saved me though, because he laid on top of me, but he got hit. I was super scared for him, but I think he's now okay. Like, it gives me chills to like think about that. FD Man. E. Texley says, Ted was born in Canada to an American mother, from E. Texley. John, I hope that Judge Dugan has a sufficient sized mudroom inside that back door, to clean your boots off, which she probably does. I bet it's huge. She's a big lady. So probably does have a giant mudroom right in her back door. I would imagine that's true. Just look at her. You can just say it. All right, my friends. Thank you so much for those great donos. Thanks for supporting our work here. Thanks for being membos and for joining us here on the day. We're very grateful for you. We are going to say what's up to our friends on X. Then we're going over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com and on YouTube. YouTube membos, hang tight, and we will drop the link, and you can join us in the after party if you're a YouTube membo. James Pepper, what's up? Good to see you over here. And what's up, Neuro D? Good to see you, my friends. Follow your fellow watchers out there. Neurodivergent one at the real Neuro D in the house. Also mod the fort down for us over on Rumble. Thank you for linking us up there. James Pepper, what's up, James? Says anchor babies can become U.S. citizens through serving in the military, but at the end of their tour, they have to apply. It's a vehicle to citizenship, right? So there's a rule for that. And Fred says, after a deep dive, I found that one of the biggest problems with America was the Chevron deference, which is right. Yeah, the Chevron deference was, the Supreme Court case, which was overturned in Loper-Bright, where the Supreme Court, previously to the recent decision, was saying that federal agencies had like a lot of discretion. They could create rules and regulations that were ultimately out of alignment with the statutes that created them. So Loper-Bright reversed that. Man, it's very good stuff. You always start the show with, hello, my beautiful friends. You're living proof that justice is blind. Thank you, Danny. Well, it's nice to see you. I'm excited to see you. That's why I say it. Be torn. So now Kilmar's asking for asylum. That's right. He is asking for asylum. And watch the judge give it to him. Oh my gosh. All right, we'll see. All right, so my friends, we'll pause here for the day. Thank you for being here. Thanks for being a part of what we're doing. Great Grandma Anon, thank you for becoming a supporter. We'll see you in the after party. And so for our YouTube friends, we're going to drop a new link in the chat in just 30 seconds. Grab that, come join us. We'll hang out, we'll debrief. We'll see what you thought about the show, take some additional comments, and just chill for a bit. So come join us, watchingthewatchers.locals.com, or snag the YouTube link as a YouTube member. But my friends, it has been a beautiful stream. Thank you for hanging with us. Thanks for going through the stories of the day, and thanks for being a part of what we're doing. We'll pause here. Before we wrap it up, I want to thank our amazing mods and meme smiths, including Donut Mind Me, John McGarvey in the house, K-Bean, Carrie B, mod for us. We've got Neuro D, Janek, and Dog Digger, along with Gigum, Elliot, and Just Rhonda, modding the fort down for us, and we're very grateful for you and for them and everybody who helps keep this train on the tracks over here. So we'll pause here for the evening. Of course, we are coming back tomorrow to get into it again. And in order to do it appropriately, we are going to need to see you right back here so that together, with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Make it a beautiful night, my friends. Sleep very well. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.
beautiful friends. Now it's that time where the stream must end. We brought the heat with every chat and line. Together we exposed corruption. One more time we dove in the truth where the media hides. Lit up the lies with receipts on all sides. The fight isn't over, but we made them sweat. We ain't done yet, no, not just yet. Because together we are watching the watchers, truth on our side. Watching the watchers, we won't be denied. Watching the watchers, eyes open wide. Fighting for freedom with nothing to hide. Drop a like and don't forget to share. And bring a friend who's ready to care. Tomorrow's lies are just today's news.